Houston. Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan.
Pushing 5 to play in the third. Kobe. Crawford. Hogan. Oh. Bring it on, Kobe, baby.
You are now tuned into the chat room. Your favorite baller's favorite podcast.
All right, so welcome back to the Chatroom Podcast. I am the Senator. I always have to make sure to introduce myself because I realized like the first 6 episodes I didn't introduce myself. Yeah. I am the Senator, and on this episode with me I got Coach Francis.
What's going on, y'all?
And I got Dewayne.
How y'all doing?
Now, on this episode, we've had over the past let's say the first 7 episodes, we had a lot of comments of when are you going to get women on here? When are you going to get women on here? So last episode we had a bunch of women ballers, Canadian ballers that went over to the States. They're playing in the States right now. And this episode here, we have some honorable guests with us. They are some really dope women coaches. We already had the men coaches. It's the women's turn. So I'm going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump in from there.
Go ahead, Lee.
What's up, everybody? Thank you guys for bringing me onto the chat room. I'm humbled to be here. My name is Liana Osei. Everyone calls me Coach Lee or just Lee. From the Jane Finch area, born and raised in Connections. I played at Eastern Commerce. Coming up, I love basketball. Currently, I am the head coach of women's basketball at St. Francis Xavier University out in Nova Scotia. And I'm just excited to chat it up with you guys. And so when there's an opportunity to kind of talk about a little bit more of the things that I do, I would love to kind of jump in, but I'm very happy to be here.
Appreciate it.
And I am Christa Eniojukin, Coach Christa. I coach at Ontario Tech University out here in Oshawa. I live in the Durham region. I actually grew up in Guelph, Ontario, though. Played at Wilfrid Laurier, played at York, teacher for 15 years, and now a full-time head coach.
That's tough.
So before we even jump into the question,
in the presence of greatness, man.
That's what I was about to say. I'm like,
definitely, for sure.
We're honored to have you on.
For sure.
And let's just jump into our first little group discussion right now. So, what are your thoughts on the course of actions and statements made by both the NBA and WNBA this week? So, as we know, like the NBA took a few days off. There was talks that they weren't going to continue. They weren't going to move forward, but then they came up with a plan with the owners and stuff like that. And what are you guys' thoughts on all of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, with me, the biggest thing, my first reaction was wow, because like it was very abrupt. So that was my first reaction. But then like taking a step back and kind of looking at it, I was like, okay, well, what's next? Like that's the biggest thing that I take from it. Like what happens next? So yeah, you guys sat out a game. You guys made a big statement. You guys were able to kind of have other leagues kind of follow you. Like
MLB,
like all the other leagues kind of followed foot, and the NBA is kind of known for that because like as everything happened with COVID, the NBA everyone else kind of shut down. So NBA is known for that kind of their power, and but the biggest thing I want to see is like what happens next. I know the Lakers kind of they're turning their arena into the voting, so that's kind of that's an actionable thing, But I just want to see what happens next. Like I don't know like where it goes from here, Well,
I believe I heard that it's like almost all teams are formed. Is that not correct?
Yeah.
I think there's only 4 that aren't able to do it or something like that.
Yeah, cause I think I know Lakers were they confirmed. I think Houston was another one that confirmed. But I think most of the teams are going towards, and I think that's what was one of their non-negotiables or whatever, like with the owners. So I think that's a very big step because with like voter suppression and all that, like that's a very important step.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess like the only thing I could think about is just okay, what happens next? Because yeah, just gotta keep the momentum forward, right? So.
Well, I would like to just shout out our WNBA players. We have 5 Canadians playing, and they've all made their voices heard. But just generally, a lot of people, like just what you see on social media, obviously it was a huge debacle when the NBA guys are like, hey, we're not playing. But I find, considering how tumultuous the last 7 months have been, like defining what success is, I find like the WNBA has done a really good job of consistently and in a sustainable way making their voices heard. Whether it's before games, after games, off the court, like they're just doing a phenomenal job. So
and
I know
very uniquely,
Yeah, exactly.
Not like a blanket statement. Like they're finding other ways to kind of have the voices heard with like the 7 bullet holes in the back and like spelling out Jacob Blake's name, and those are very unique, very targeted things, as opposed to the NBA just having it's not like I don't want to like downgrade it, but having like Black Lives Matter or whatever, like that's a very blanket statement. There's like it's not really addressing anything, it's not really putting anything to the forefront. But like I found the way that the NBA were able to do that was kind of cool.
Did any of you guys see the sit down with Holly Rowe and they interviewed the 5 women? It was a panel discussion. And Natalie Onchonwa, actually, Guelph, Ontario, shout out. She was on there as one of the 5 from the league, and they spoke up, and it was like a 12-minute segment of them discussing. So when they were actually striking or whatever, boycotting, they actually sat down and they explained why. And I thought it was really well done and different for them to do again and hear exactly why, rather than just like a blanket statement read to the press.
Right.
That's
well,
cool.
we know with the NBA guys too, like emotions were just flaring over, right? With everything that happened with Jacob Blake, but like we kind of know now after the fact that really wasn't the plan, and that there was some frustration behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And also, and I think it just speaks to the significance of making sure there is a sense of unity and one voice. But at the same time, it's hard to be rational when you're dealing with this BS. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's not like we can't blame the Milwaukee Bucks for feeling so, angered and frustrated where they just really felt like they couldn't play. So it's that, like it's just a thin line there because in a perfect world, we're all on the same page, but that's just not how it is in real time. Right.
For sure.
I heard the argument that some people are like, it shouldn't be on the players. And yes, it shouldn't, but what are we going to do? Like, it's on them. They feel it. They're in front of us. So I do like the idea that they took some. I actually, frankly, would have liked them to not play at all. Like, I think it would have been a bigger statement. The owners have insane power and insane money and connections and so on. And they probably have reached some of those based on what happened over the last few days. But if they really refused, how much more would they have done? Like, I guess we'll never know, but it's just, when your hands are tied, I think some big things can come.
I think the biggest thing with them not coming back at all, the monetary repercussions were.
Yeah. And it's not fair to ask them to do that either. It's just it would have been, I think it may have had more impact.
For sure.
And I think that's why ultimately they even decided to resume the season, because they realized, this money that we can we can make off of this, we can inject it back into the community. We can come up with our ideas and we can figure out what we need to do, and this money can help instill those ideas. So I think that was one of the main reasons why they said, you know what, instead of just canceling this altogether, how about we take the money and we put it to causes that we believe in, that'll further us in this movement, that'll further us in a positive light. So I think that was one of the ultimate things.
And I think the money's important, but also like in real time, because we're so communication technology based, like that platform is huge. Like you look at the WNBA players who really, in my opinion, they started a lot of this. And if it wasn't for the pre and post game discussions, if it wasn't for what's going on during the anthem, when you're not playing, yes, players can use their personal platforms, but you don't get to put it in the face of really the people we're trying to challenge, right? And so when it becomes a question of, hey, you were really looking forward to this game 1 Raptors Boston game, but now this is what you got to look forward to. You know it's there, it's in front of your face, right? So I don't know that I know what the best solution is, but even in terms of the ask, right? With the NHL, they had the Hockey Diversity Alliance that was formed. They just like less than 24 hours ago got to the point where they have the list of 10 things that specifically they're looking for. And I think with just how crazy everything is, that would have also been more challenging, because you're going from everyone's in the bubble. You can actually strategize around the clock. If we're in Milwaukee and we're in Canada and we're here, how well does that work now? You know what I mean? And so in some ways it provides that opportunity to do that, especially, you know, during a time when travel is disencouraged and you know, we're just distanced. I mean, I like the fact that it's in the news, it's on CNN, it's, you know, and I think that's, you know, that's important. And then, we got to follow up with one of those specific asks. And so I like that some of our professional sport leagues are now coming back and saying, okay, great. You know, the organization that we formed, and, you know, a lot of these, you know, MLS, Black Players for Change, you know, 7-8 weeks ago, they formed it. And now they get to that point where it's like, this is what we're looking for.
I'm always appreciative of the initiatives that the players come up with. There's been a lot of knock on Milwaukee for not informing Orlando that they weren't going to play, because it looked kind of bad on Orlando being out there warming up and Milwaukee not coming out at all. But as you said before, like, it's one of those things where you can't tell an individual or a team that is the closest to what happened, where it actually happened, how they're going to react, right? And I don't agree with the knock on it, but I understand it. But I'm still proud of all the players, WNBA, NBA. I was shocked when NHL stopped playing certain games, because that one there caught me off guard. I like the MLB one where they did the 42 seconds for Jackie Robinson and then they walked off. Like, there were certain things that that took place, and I was like, I'm proud of them. Now, what we always need to remind people, and this is not just for American listeners, this is for Canadian listeners too, is that one of the most important things that you can do is you have the power to vote, and don't just wait to vote on the federal terms. You got to vote for your city councilor. You got to vote municipal, and like, you got to do all the steps. Like, you have the opportunity to vote as much as you want, and you have that power. So you need to use that power. You can't complain after that, oh, this government's in place and my vote wouldn't have mattered. You don't know. If the amount of people that say that their vote doesn't matter actually went out there and voted, it could make a huge difference on who's actually running the governments. So my biggest thing is always to empower people to vote and make sure you go out and vote, because I vote every chance that I get.
I completely agree.
Facts, yep.
Is there anything else you guys want to say on that, or do you guys want to move on?
Yeah, I think we can move on. Yeah, that's it.
All right, so let's jump into some on-court Hall of Fame type questions now. What would or who would be on your all-time WNBA starting five?
Well, it's not current player. It doesn't have to be current right now.
No, it could be anyone. Anyone.
Oh, from the 1 second. Before we jump to that question, I just want to make sure that we do this. I wanted to do that at the beginning, but I forgot. Rest in peace to Clifford Robinson. Rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. Those were two big losses in the NBA circle, and not just the NBA, but their impact that they had across the world. I feel like we should definitely pay our respects. So just want to say rest in peace.
Yep.
So yeah, now let's jump into it. Who would be on your all-time WNBA starting five?
Yeah, whatever. I always jump in first, but whatever. I don't know. It happens, man.
Last episode, Dewayne had to tell Coach.
I know he was
Just chill. Let the guests go first.
I'm always chomping at a bit, but yeah, I'll start. I'll go Don Staley at 1. I got Tarazi at 2. I got E-Double-D at 3. Candace Parker at 4. Lisa Leslie at 5. So I got my 1 and my 5 are gonna lock up and they're gonna play D. My 2 is just she's a female Kobe. I love her. And then my 3 and my 4 are just unicorns. They can do everything. They can handle the ball. They can bring up the court. They can get people involved. They can shoot the rock. They can take you down to the block. So I think my 5 is very.
Who did you say your 3 was?
Elena Deladon.
Elena Deladon?
Yeah, that's my 3. And then Candace Parker at my 4. So that's what I got. So, that's what I got.
We can have the coaches go next.
All right, I'll go my 5. So disclaimer, coming up, I didn't get to watch no women's hoops. So everything for me is like
new
2007 onwards. Like it's all fairly new.
She's a baby. That's all that says. That's what it is.
But my number 1 is Dawn Staley. She's the first basketball player in the WNBA, female basketball player that I really ever heard about and did my homework on. At 2, I would have Cappy Pondexter. She's a G. She went to Rutgers. While she was at Rutgers, she got a WNBA tattoo put on her arm. That's how nice she knew she was. At the 3, this is a really, really tough one, but I went Angie McCoughtry because she's just raw. Like she's gonna absorb contact. She's gonna get to the line. She'll hit you with some threes if you step back, but she's just a dog. Candace Parker, of course, she played college basketball with one of my idols. And then I would have Brittany Griner at the 5 because she did a lot for the game. I mean, I know like Lisa Leslie was the first woman to dunk in a WNBA game. However, coming up, Brittany is more in my kind of generation in terms of just doing some foolishness. She's like, she's dunking the ball in the NCAA tournament. Like it just was, it sparked a whole new watershed.
And she's physical too, man.
Yes.
Man, you guys, you stole so many of mine, but I'm going to mix things up a little bit.
Right.
So just for fun, I'm going to change my point guard. So I'm going to go Sue Bird at the 1. And I'm going to go Cheryl Swoops at the 2.
Okay.
First female to have her own shoe, guys. Like she's legit. Parker's my 3 for sure, still, hands down. And then Shamika Holsqua, I loved her growing up. I was like, what? Like, how did she do all of that? Like, I didn't understand how she could do what she could do. And then I'll stick with Lisa Leslie. Yeah, she's got that 5 spot unlock.
Yeah. She was like, she was one of the first women that I ever watched. I'm like, yo, she's tough. Like, she's one like, and then like obviously like Dawn Staley and like even like Tamika Catchings, like they're like those are all women that I watch as well. But like Lisa Leslie, I watched her play. I'm like, yo, like she dominates every possession, offensively, defensively. Like
her
it's just
hands
like,
are on every ball.
I've never like prior to her, I've never seen that before, where she's just everywhere. And yeah.
And I want to shout out Tammy Sutton Brown. She's our first drafted, and she did a lot for the game at a time when nobody really knew. You know what I mean? And so I just wanted to shout her out one time.
Cool.
Wayne, who you got?
Who y'all got, man?
I'll go next. I got Sue Bird at the 1. I got Diana Taurasi at the 2. I got Tamika Catchings at the 3. I always liked her game. She just her tenacity. She's a walking bucket. At one time in her career. Shamika Holdsclaw, I had her as my 4 as well. And she's a really, really good player. I really enjoyed watching her. And Lisa Leslie at the center. I mean, Lisa was one of the most dominant in her time and that Sparks team. They were hard to beat. And perennial all-star, champion. I mean, Lisa Leslie did it all. So I think that's my team right there.
This man stole my whole backcourt. All right. And, starting the next podcast, I think I'm just going to go before
Go
Dewayne.
first.
Yeah, you see?
He steals my stuff. So same backcourt, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi. For me, my 3, Maya Moore. 4, Candace Parker. 5, Lisa Leslie. Like, there's not. I was never a big WNBA fan, but I followed players, and those 5 players were players that I always followed. Like, when their games come on, I was like, all right, I'm watching. Like, I don't care what other game is on, I'm watching them play. So, like, they had to be on my all-time. Like, was pretty easy for me.
True. All right, well, kind of like, well, just jumping off of that, like, who are some players, who are some of your favorite players that you guys grew up watching?
I think all the ones that you guys listed, like in terms of the females, for me, it was Dawn Staley and Sue Bird as point guards. Like, I played point guard, so I wanted to pass like them. I wanted to be like them. But from the guys' side, my favorite player when I was growing up was Kevin Johnson.
Okay, AJ. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just, like, his IQ, I followed them, and I was just, like, in love with him until Steve Nash came around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Kevin Johnson was a point guard at that time.
Right? He was like a coach's dream.
Dangerous.
So.
Yeah, he was dangerous.
And I think that's the first time we've mentioned him on this podcast in 10 episodes. So
It is. Give him some love.
I really liked Alvin Williams on the Raptors. I watched a lot of Raptors. That was just like one of my pastimes. And I really didn't tune into any other games. So I really liked Alvin Williams coming up. I really liked Sebastian Telfair when his documentary came out. And
I was fire.
Big on the point guards. Chris Paul, when he was in high school, he had that crazy game that he dedicated to his grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And then Shannon Bobbitt was like the G. So small point guard, went to Trinity Valley, born and raised in New York, and played at Tennessee before she went to the league.
Mm-hmm. That's tough. Yeah, like Alvin Williams, like he had one move that I used to always try to emulate. Like he's the step back.
The step back.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, I see this guy do it. Touch the ground. I'm like, yo, that's tough.
It was crisp.
That move is tough.
Yeah, I never practiced on dribbling, so I never had to worry about that.
You're just a spot-up shooter.
Catch and shoot.
I hear you. Yeah, I mean, like, everybody, like, I watch everybody. Kobe, AI, everybody, so.
Yeah.
I never feel like my favorite player is Kobe and then Magic, but, yeah. Right now, I think my favorite player right now, Steph Curry, to watch right now, for sure.
Dope.
But yeah.
Everyone knows my favorite player, Nash.
I know. Yeah.
So that's all it is.
That's why I kind of smiled when Nash was mentioned.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone else say Steve Nash but you.
What?
Yeah,
How is that possible?
I've never heard anyone else. Like, I've heard people mention Steve Nash as a great point guard, but I never heard anyone besides Senator mention Steve Nash
really?
Favorite point guard.
As a favorite player.
That's great. Yeah. But like the things that he could do and get away, like, and everyone thought he was so unathletic, but he could beat everybody off the dribble whenever he wanted. And he could either score or set somebody up every single time. Like, he was around every basket.
I always say that man should have had like a percentage of on people's contracts, because he got a lot of people a lot of money. Like
Sean Marion.
Oh yeah.
Sean Marion was an all-star. Like, he was amazing just because of him.
He got a stat, what is it, 100 million?
100 mil from New York off that pick and roll. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing about Steve Nash too, like, there's two things I took away from Steve Nash. Like, he really personified changing your pace. Like, watching him play, you're like,
yeah,
what's he doing? Like, he's not just going hard. Like, it was the first time as a player myself, I was like, yo, the way he intentionally goes from slow to fast to slow, that's when it really clicked to me. That's how he beats people. It's not because he's catching and ripping. At the time, it was like, Vince Carter, T-Mac, like you're looking at players that it was straight athleticism. The second thing was I feel like Steve really became a pioneer for like being a great teammate. And so like, I mean, from a tangible standpoint, the amount of high fives and butt slaps and like it was so intentional that you saw how it translated to wins at a time when they really didn't stat that, and now they stat it. Like our national team program, I think 6 or 7 years ago started statting that. Like you are a way more valuable teammate when you are given daps, when you are given high fives. And so I feel like, he doesn't get enough credit for that, but that was one of the biggest things that I took away from watching him play.
I think with him, it also came with him playing soccer. So playing with a bigger team, you have to keep everybody engaged, right? And like that, I think he was able to translate playing soccer into basketball, and that really helped everybody around him. Like it wasn't just he was never just looking for his own stats. He was always looking to get everybody else involved. So like and his toughness, like when he took that shot from like Robert, who was it? Was it Robert Horry?
I mean, let's be real. He kind of flopped a little bit.
He did flop a little bit, but like if you watch NBA nowadays, like it's even worse. Like he took a bump, like, and like for him just to be like, all right, like I'm still gonna stay in the game, like that type of stuff. Like he
was like fixing his nose.
He was fixing his nose and everything. That's way better than when Paul Pierce went down.
And we all know what happened with that whole Paul Pierce thing. We all know what he admitted.
Oh man! All right, well, for the coaches here, I mean, take us through your journey. Like, how have you guys been able to kind of be successful and kind of get to where you guys are currently in your careers?
You want to go first, Lee?
Okay, sure, I'll go first. Well, for me, it was all about my community coaches. Like that's really the reason why I'm here today. I'm a first generation Ghanaian Canadian. And so in a West African household, nothing I did from an athletic standpoint was ever valued or of interest, right? So when my mom came to this country, she was like, I want my kids to be doctors and be lawyers and be nurses. And even in the household, it was like, my brother, his responsibilities were to take out the garbage. And for me, it was like washing dishes. It was helping my mom with hair. So in the area that I grew up in, I had to make a lot of choices kind of subconsciously, like, like who should I be hanging around? And so I just naturally drifted towards sports, and I played basketball and soccer mostly at school, but then basketball is really what helped me. There was a few girls who lived kind of in our housing complex areas, and one day they approached me and said, hey, you play OBA, like you ever play organized ball? And I was like, what's that? Like, I don't know what that means. And so next thing I knew, I'm on a bus going up the Jane Strip to Falstaff. And then that was it. I was like, holy smokes. Like I could actually play ball with other girls who play ball. Cause at the time, at my grade school, I just played with all the guys. I just hung around all the guys all the time and kind of played hoops outside. And so a lot of my coaches who were able to open the door for me at that community level are a big part of the reason why I'm here today. I would also say, like, my faith has really, really gotten me by. And so connecting with people, even who aren't necessarily coaches, but that I've met in the sport community, they've really been able to help me in more ways than I can count. And so the journey took me through playing OBA, playing AAU, with the Toronto-based team, with the New York-based team, and then coming back and meeting Christa. Christa actually opened the door for me to start coaching formally. Because before that point, I just did a lot on the men's side. I didn't really do anything on the girl side because usually I was the youngest and the only girl kind of in my age, and so I was looking up to a lot of young women who were playing, but it was just completely different. And so I feel like all those people who felt the need to pay it forward and to give to the youth, that's what I find myself trying to do now.
That's dope.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
Yeah, so Lee and we coached on provincial team together a few years ago. But prior to that, for me, it was when I first came out of university, I taught at Rockcliffe Middle School, and I coached the boys and the girls team. And I was approached by Canada Basketball to do CP, and I was scared. Like, I was like, I don't really feel comfortable. I'm not like, I'm one of the younger, I'm one of the only Black people. Like, this is just not really what I want to do. I just was like more comfortable just coaching at the school, right? But then there's people like Sepu Bernard, who's an assistant with Washington Mystics, and other coaches who just were really encouraging. And like Lee said, like, those people open the doors, and when you're so young and so new and so fresh, like, you just feel so grateful that you don't want to disappoint them. So I was like a yes person. Like, I was like, okay, and barely breathing and just trying to keep up with everybody else, right? And then as I found my footing, I started making connections in the community. I started doing rep coaching. And then I had my children, and it was just a crazy life balance. I was like, how do I do both? And I don't know any women that are married with kids who coach. So I don't even have anyone to mentor me. Like, how am I going to figure this out? And the people at OBA, actually, I have to give them a ton of credit, because they were really open and said they would support me. So I was the first provincial team coach that had a babysitter hired for my kids. Denise Dinyard at Canada Basketball, I coached the 3-on-3 youth championship team for Canada, and my daughter was 3.5 months, and she literally had her in a carrier on the side. So like, without those people, I probably would have just quit, because I really needed them to support me at that point. I had summers off, but my husband's working, and who's going to take care of my kids, right? So that was super important for me to be able to do both, and then coach provincial teams, and then did some prep teams as well. Lee and I coached against each other for a year in the prep league. And then, to be completely transparent, I got burnt out from doing too much, right? Like, I'm trying to juggle my family, my teaching, my prep coaching. Like, how do I do all this? And so I took a leave from teaching, and I'm a firm believer in faith as well. And like, that's when the doors opened for Ontario Tech University to coach full time. And it was just like, I don't know if I didn't stop and have time to reflect if this opportunity would have even came up. But yeah, that's where I am now.
That's dope. That's an amazing story to hear.
That's tough. Yeah, that kind of echoes something that I always say. I always tell people, things happen for a reason, and what's for you can't pass you. So I tell the kids that I work with all the time that stay at it, you know, and eventually, if it's for you, it'll happen for you. So that's.
And one of the bottom lines that we're hearing from both of the coaches is that you just got to keep the faith. Like, things might overwhelm you, but like, if you keep the faith in what you're really trying to do, then those doors will open. You can't just give up 100%. The first time when it happens. Yeah. Like, 100%. You gotta keep it. So. Yeah.
And I will say, for Lee and I, we are people of faith, but we also work our butts off. Like, we were ready for our purpose and our next calling, right? So like, that's the other thing. Like, don't get frustrated along the way with, oh, I didn't get that, or I didn't get this. Like, we're constantly learning. Like I mentioned to you, Coach Francis, that like, we have a chat group, and we're like sending each other stuff. Like, we're always trying to find the new clinic, the new this, the new what, so that when opportunities arise, we're ready.
Yep. That's good. Yep.
Dewayne, what you got?
All right. Well, being women of color in this coaching world, what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced, and how are you personally able to maneuver through those challenges?
Well, one of the things that kind of stands out for me in my journey is I was at a point when I left Toronto, I got recruited to play in the States. I was playing. I spent a year at the University of Miami in Florida. Then I got out of there. Couldn't stand my coach. I spent a year at one of the top junior colleges in the country, and I graduated, and I committed to another 4-year Division I program. But then we had some financial and health issues going on at home. So I came back home. And one of the biggest challenges was that summer I lost my brother, and it was compounded because my brother, he was always very bright, but he had graduated. He did nothing in sports. He was just a really smart guy. He's working in the corporate world. But my mom had taken out all these credit cards and everything to fund his education along with loans. And so kind of within a year, or not even within 6 months, we had to file for bankruptcy, and then we were homeless. And so even though, like, prior to me leaving to the States, I had a lot of challenges coming up because a big part of it stemmed from a cultural standpoint. There was nobody in my Ghanaian culture who did anything with sports. You know, it's church, it's working hard. You know, my mom did hair in our kitchen and she worked factory jobs. And so I bounced around a lot. I was on government assistance for a while on my own. Then my high school coach and his mom took me in. And then I lost his mom, who was really close to me while I was away. And so when I came back, it was such a challenging point in my life. And at the same time, that year was an amazing one up to that point, because I was giving back to the community. I was doing some stuff with Ontario basketball. I had started my own organization called Can Leads. We run a number of events for the basketball community. And then I was kind of at this weird crossroads, and it was like, okay, well, maybe I could just do this as a profession. Like, I can do recruitment consulting, I could do training, I can sell a scouting service, because I was offering all those services already. And then when my brother passed, it just was such a hit to our family. It figuratively and literally broke us up. My mom had to rent a room with a friend that she knew way back in the day. I had to live with a friend. My sister was shipped off somewhere else. And one of my mentors, Roy Rana, who was he was coaching at Eastern when I was at Eastern, and so he always was somebody I could talk to. He was like, Lee, you got to go back to school. He said, as a Black female, he's like, you're very bright. He goes, I know there's some opportunities here, but like you're gonna be faced with way more challenges if you don't go back to school. And this was after my brother had passed that I really made that decision. And my brother himself, he actually played a big role in getting me primed to go back to school. And so I would say that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I had. I mean, it was 8 years ago, and it still feels like it was yesterday. And the last 7 months have been so challenging, because I know that one of the things he struggled with was his mental health, and because of his color. And so that I would say is probably one of the most challenging moments. And more than anything, it broke my mom. And my mom is everything. She came here and she's just always been concerned about providing something for me and my siblings. And so, I always tell, I'm not somebody who fears a lot of things, but the one thing that I fear is passing away before my mother, because she, like, her heart just broke, and like, I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to, for a parent to have to bury their kid. And so I would say that probably was the hardest year of my life, but it was also the year that opened a lot of doors, and my brother played a role in that. And, like, that's the reason why I have the opportunities today. He gave me my first $200 to register my business that year. He dragged me from a night shift up to Waterloo to register at Laurier, and kind of, behind closed doors, just trying to get into any arts program so I can get my foot in. And so I thank him for that, and all the people along the way. But I would say that was probably my biggest challenge. And I wouldn't say that I've overcome that moment, but it has brought my family together. It has taught me resilience in terms of, coming back from a lot. And it's part of my motivation now.
That's amazing.
Oh, incredible. Wow.
Condolences for sure. But
yeah.
That story of perseverance, and that's amazing for sure. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Just to, I guess, elaborate on that, and Lee, speaking of her own journey, I would say she probably echoes what I'm about to say now, because Leanna and I sit on the Black Coaches Association together, and there's lots of other things that we share. But even before I became a head coach at a university level, it's helping people like Leanna. So her story that she just shared, we have stories like that of kids on our team, multiple, every single year. And it is, you know, gut-wrenching and heartbreaking to say to kids on your team, like, I've tried everything, but I don't have any funds to be able to assist you. And there's some kids that then no longer can attend or can't graduate or can't continue on or have to take a year off from work and sometimes don't come back. Like, there's just constant. And as coaches, when we're giving and we're investing, like, it's relationship first, right? So we're trying to help. So that tears us apart. Like, those are the sleepless nights, not just, I can't win a game, right? It's, I can't help the Black community the way that I would like to. And so, especially in Canada, where to get scholarships is harder, we don't offer full rides, and to see kids go to different situations that you know is not going to be as valuable for them, or not be able to get accepted because they got like a 77 instead of a 79.
Yeah.
So we're both sitting on the Black Coaches Association. I'm also with the Black Biracial Indigenous Task Force for the OUA, and looking at ways to really make lifelong impacts and changes so that we can change some of those things.
That's really dope. And it's like, one of the things that I've noticed from talking to a lot of coaches, and even knowing Coach Francis as long as I've known him, it's a lot of the coaches play such a pivotal role in individual lives. They're like social workers without the title, because they're not just dealing with, they have to deal with, the on-court stuff, but it's always the stuff that's behind the court and off the court that becomes the biggest things. And once they're able to really make those impact in those individual lives, even if they don't make it to the next level, they always remember that those were the people that were there to support them if they didn't feel like they got support anywhere else, right? So it's a commendable thing that all coaches do, especially the coaches that are really invested in the people that they're helping.
Yeah.
I mean, like, people, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, at a smaller scale, would be like just having more females. Like, when I coached, and being from Guelph, being naive, I would say, to what the GTA has to offer with ball and, you know, and things, like, it was not a welcoming environment for me to start coaching rep. And I wouldn't say there was very many people that were like, for Christa coaching. Like, I didn't get that at all, right? Leanna grew up here, so she had her community around her. But for me coming in, it was like, who's she? Who's this young girl that thinks she can coach, right? And a lot of guys, boys clubs that were like, no, not for it. And just especially how I had really strong, like, I've been in Durham Region a long time. Most of the girls in Durham Region I've coached at some point, and a lot of them went on to play at a high level. So I had really good teams, right? And they were really always targeted and people trying to steal them and so on. So that, as a female, and just earning that respect as a Black female as well, that was challenging.
Yeah. I gotta shout out my pops, Coach Roe Russell, because if he didn't open up a lot of doors just through his connections, then it would have been tough for me to really start coaching as well. Because I started training when I was young, like when I was getting training myself. So at Eastern, I coached our junior boys team when I was like in the 11th grade. But because of the connection I made with Coach Rowe when I was like 12, I was able to do so much stuff on court. And so often when people approach me because of the connection, they already kind of gave me that respect. And I mean, it wasn't everybody. Some people would be skeptical. Like, what do you mean this girl's a head coach at, you know, this elite team or anything like that? But then once they saw me on the court, once they saw me doing player development, once they spoke to me, then it was like, oh man, okay, cool. She knows what she's doing. But like Chris was saying, even in the GTA where, you know, we've got the second highest Black population in Canada, there was no other female coaching boys sports. So it was like, you know what I mean? Like it's such an oxymoron, because you would think that, oh man, okay, let me find somebody that can help me. But instead, again, I was really into the men's side, because it was all guys that, you know, that were able to help me, all male coaches, all male teams, and so forth. But yeah, getting more women, I think, is important. And now, I mean, we're in 2020, and one of my former teammates is on Raptors 905 staff. You know, like that's huge. Like I love that, because now the young women coming up now see me and they're like, oh shoot, okay, a girl can coach. You know what I mean? And it's not this like, you know, like this foreign, you know, from a different world kind of concept. Like when I was younger, I used to tell myself, oh man, like I'm going to coach in the NBA. I'm going to, you know, be a player development coach, or I'm going to be an assistant coach. And now we're actually seeing it. The NBA actually receives the highest grade for underrepresentation, right? In terms of getting women in and people of color and so forth. So I really love that we've been able to kind of take those affirmative action initiatives and lead through sport. You know what I mean? What's been eye-opening for me the last 7 or 8 months with the BCCA are kind of the ever-present challenges for sports that don't have as much racialization, right? So obviously with our basketball, because it's so infused in Black culture and popular culture, it's more widely consumed. It's really cool. You know, like everybody wants to be the next. But what about hockey? What about soccer? You know, I've been so surprised at the amount of Black people in track and field and soccer. And I'm like, holy smokes, like it's crazy that I actually have never heard of you or your program. And so it's just an interesting dynamic there, because it's nothing I ever considered, because I've always been like basketball, you know? So it's just, yeah, it's beyond me. Christa is one of 12 coaches that are going to be piloting the first ever Black female coach mentorship program in the country. And so part of it is breaking down those barriers. Like let's put women like Christa on a platform as trailblazers in different sports, and now that visibility is there, right? That presence is there. And so, you know, that girl that may not have the immediate circle, she might not have a coach role, you know, like now there's somewhere that she can go, there's somewhere she can look to.
That's really dope.
Yeah.
And before Dewayne asks the next question, so GTA, for people that aren't aware, is the Greater Toronto area. So, you know, there's some people that's never...
It's our world, like we...
So I just felt like I had to break that down real quick.
All right. What have been your most memorable moments as coaches?
So, coaching the provincial team, I was an assistant for 3 years, and then I was a head coach for 4 years. And if you coach Team Ontario, you have to win. Like,
yeah,
that's it. Bottom line. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and so as an assistant, I won 2 gold before I became a head coach. And then I was head coach. You feel like everyone's playing their best game versus Team Ontario. Super intense, right? So my first year, we lost and we came second. I've never felt a loss like that in my entire life. We lost to Saskatchewan. I got out-coached by like a 55-year-old man who was unbelievable. Like he knew his X's and O's, like he knew it all, right? And I knew it. I went in the stands afterwards, said to my mentor, like, what do I do? Like, how do I be better, right? And he told me flat out, you got to coach. If you want to learn, you either choose to learn from this experience and get better, or you sulk about it. So I'm crying, like I'm full on like, but how do I get better? Like, so I kid you not, you can ask my husband, I slept in the Saskatchewan t-shirt for bed, like probably 50% of that year, up into the next year. Because I was like, I will not, like, this is not going to happen. And then the next year we won. And I was just like, but like, that was when I knew I was like a little bit basketball crazy. Like, that, like I definitely like, I'm committed to this. But it took something like that to sting to be able to push myself to be a better coach.
there's a terminology for that now. They call that Mamba mentality. So
Yeah,
there you go.
Most definitely.
This is a hard one for me because there's so many memorable coaching moments. Like I've for a long time before I started formally coaching, I did a lot of training, and so like one of the there's been so many players I've been fortunate enough to have coached that I feel like just like what does it for me is seeing where they've come from and you know where they've gone. So anyways, the answer that I will give is 2017, 2018, I was hired to coach at the Rise Center in Brantford, Ontario. And so it was the first time ever that I was a full-time coach. Like that's all I did. But not only that, I mean, I was also a dorm parent. So I lived with 13 young women, teenage aged. It was just a phenomenal experience. There was a lot of money put behind it. So we had our own private facility. I had the key to the facility. So that was pretty crazy. We had high-end equipment. We had more than 100 Division I and youth sport coaches come to our practices. I was able to network out of this world and get some job opportunities before the end of the year. We actually throughout the year, we would compete in tournaments. And when we would go to compete, we would also do campus tours and visits. And so like when I was coming up, it was just wherever you could drive to if you had the time. And now because Canadians are actually involved in that process and they're going through the full recruitment process, you know, we were able to kind of empower some of the young women, make those connections. When we go, let's say we're going to play at a tournament in North Carolina, on that 5 or 6 day trip, we're touring, you know, North Carolina A&T, we're touring NC State, we're going to UNC. And so I would say just that experience is probably something I'm going to keep with me forever because so little of it was the basketball itself. The basketball was great. We had, there was a young woman who was like MVP of the league, who's now at Virginia Tech. We lost in the finals, so that was pretty memorable for the wrong reasons. But there were so many tears, there were so many laughs. At one point, I call myself Judge Julie. So every time there was beef in the household, because you can imagine like 13 girls, right? Like a high amount of estrogen. Everybody feels like they're talking. Like it was half drama, docu-series. You know, like it was a mixture between what's that? You remember when our Canadians went down to Finley Prep, when Corey and Tristan and Mike and those guys went down to Finley Prep in Las Vegas? It was like half that, half Dr. Phil, you know, like half. It just was all over. I felt like if I recorded that year, it would have been like an epic documentary. Even the way I went out, like that year, I will never forget because I loved what I did.
I told her she was crazy. I was like, nah, man. Give me enough money to live with those kids.
Well, I loved what I did, but I got paid peanuts, right? So it was like everything was comped, but I didn't make any dough. So I was living the dream, but I wasn't able to pay my loans. I wasn't able to help at home. And when it came down to it, my mom started to come down with some health issues. And so I really had to walk away from that opportunity. So just in that process of looking for jobs, that's part of the reason how I ended up here at StFX. And it was funny because ever since I was young, I always hear people say, oh, ball isn't life. Or are you saying ball is life? It doesn't pay your bills. It doesn't pay your bills. And then, you know, literally now it pays the bills. You know what I mean? Not well. There's a lot of, but you know what I mean? So I just, like, God just has a funny way. Like, it's just everything is on his time. But I would say my year being a dorm parent and coaching prep school it's something that, I mean, to this day, I still talk to a number of those young women. I'm still checking up with them, you know, and it's something that's going to stick with me. Yeah.
And Lee's being way too humble. She beat me in the semis in that year on a game, on a buzzer beater.
Ooh, wow.
Remember Ariel? Yeah.
Oh yeah, Ariel.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like just kind of echoing what you're saying. Like, I tell some of the kids that I work with that that little orange ball, man, can take you a lot of places that you'll never expect it, man. Take you around the world, get you in circles that you will never think about it. Just that little orange ball, right? So,
100%.
They got us a podcast.
Most definitely.
I said it got us a podcast. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
Got me out here in Alberta coaching and stuff. So it's like, yeah, that little orange ball, man, special. If you put your all into it, there's a lot of things that can come from it for sure.
Definitely. So I got a question, the last question for the coaches. What advice do you guys have for any basketball recruits that are looking to further their career into college and even beyond that?
You want me to go? I can go. It's really like there's a lot of kids that can play ball, right? But it's separating yourself from the average person. So, are you waking up early to ensure you get your workouts in? Are you doing the very best you can academically? And that doesn't mean you have to have 90s, but what is your work ethic? Because I think that goes so much further for when you get into university. It's not the kids that just get 90s that are going to do well in university. Yeah. It really comes down to what is your work ethic and how do you carry yourself? How do you respond to coaches? How do you communicate? Do you have a kind heart? Those things really, really matter and go really far. And I don't know if enough kids really understand that. Because in terms of recruiting, if I'm thinking right now of all the kids I'm recruiting, there's a couple of kids that just stand out because of their work ethic and their communication.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
I would say advice would be, if you know, I find a lot of what you're exposed to has to do with who is in your circle or who is in your social network. And so I think it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to put yourself out there. I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't say, hey, let me reach out to North Pole Hoops. Let me reach out to Ontario Basketball. Let me reach out. I was like, hey, I'm here. I just want to help. So I would say, don't be afraid to show that humility and say, listen, I don't know what I'm doing. I just know that I'm really passionate about the game, because that can lead to so many other things, like getting yourself a mentor that can really help you navigate spaces so that you don't have to go through the same mistakes that somebody else did. So half of it is the humility part. And I just think as people of color, we're, in so many different ways, we just have to kind of suck it up and, in terms of our challenges, and that's fine, but we still have to be ready to ask for help. We still have to be able to apologize. When I work with young people now, even when I go back home, I'll work out some of the Crestwood guys. I'll go by, some of the young girls that are coming up, and the socialization piece isn't quite there. And, part of it is a cultural component. In West African families and Caribbean families, we don't talk like that. We don't apologize. Parents don't apologize to their kids. You're getting beatings. You're getting, if your mom feels bad about something, we might cook you a meal, but that actually translates into what we're doing outside of our home too. It wasn't until my brother passed away that my mom said, I love you, and I was like, that's so awkward. It's just, so what does that mean? Well, we struggle to express our emotions. Mm-hmm. We struggle to say, hey, I apologize. I did something wrong. And so more than anything, now that I'm older, I'm on those kids. I'm like, listen, accountability right now. What do you need to, you know what I'm saying? Because it's not to say that our home environments are not great, but it's not things that we're comfortable with. But when you start, when you're someone who plays on a team of 12 and now you're going off to a prep school, or now you're going off to university, or now you're in the job market, you're expected to have those skills, right? You can't just put your head down and, play your game, for lack of a better term. And so I just think from a socialization piece, it's okay to be vulnerable, whether it is asking for help, whether it is being accountable. That would be my biggest advice. I think it's only going to open more doors for you.
Yeah,
I agree.
Definitely.
I agree.
Most definitely.
I agree.
So at this point of the podcast, this is where we give everybody an opportunity to promote their social media and promote whatever other stuff that they're working on, or any information that you think that our audience should know. So, Coach, you want to start this one off?
Yeah, it's always the same thing. Real deal _Francis. We're getting back in the gym really soon. We start training and stuff next week, so that's exciting. Finally able to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, COVID kind of shut down everything. Like, we're hosting nationals, so it's a big year for the school and the program and Calgary basketball in general. So it's like it was kind of up in the air when COVID happened. Last year nationals was canceled because COVID. So this year we're kind of worried about it. So now we got dates in place. We got the season schedules all hashed out. Like, everything is ready to go. So it's just once we're able to kind of get in the gym, that's the exciting part, and we're able to do that starting next week. So that's kind of exciting. So yeah, so that's what I'm working on.
Dope.
I'll go next. Well, I coach at StFX, so if anybody wants to follow what we're doing, if you're a prospective athlete out there, hit us up, StFX _WBB. For my people of color in the Canadian sports community, go to thebcca.com. We have a free membership. We are trying to, on a small and a large scale, just advocate for Black coaches of all sports. If you have a sport business, we would love to help you promote your sport business. It's a passion project of mine, and I've been fortunate enough to have people like Christa supporting. And, I think that, in the next few years, I just want to make it easier for us to help our communities and to give back. I want to make it easier for us to apply for jobs and start to, cut into that generational gap. I really want to advocate for those who have come and gone or who are 20, 30 years in the game and have never been due credit. And so if anyone has any interest in learning more about the BCCA, it's thebcca.com. The Instagram and the Twitter is BCC_association.
So, Christa Eniujukin, Ontario Tech Basketball. Our Instagram handle is Ridgebacks WBB if you want to follow us. I also run a STEM and sports camp and programs for the youth. Very important if we're going to have strong student athletes at the next level, that they're involved in that stuff early at younger ages. So that's at Active Scholars.
Oh.
All right.
Here we go.
The Instagram. The Instagram is Chaz Tenenbaum, CHAS_Tenenbaum, TENEENBAUM, and the Twitter is Cashern10, CASSHERN 10.
I got the whole alphabet.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know if you've been checking out the videos, but I only put his Instagram. I'm like, I can't put. I'm not. I'm sorry. As for me, you can follow me at The Senator. Also, make sure to check out the Not So Soft podcast. It comes out every Friday with myself and my brothers, Kino the Great and Nino Rockwell. Also, don't forget to follow the Chatroom Podcast Instagram at the.chatroompod. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel because we got YouTube exclusives that come up there all the time. The last one would be the episode with Keisha Fresh, and also our second round picks for the NBA basketball playoffs. So before we move forward, I want to say thank you. Like, I wish I could say it 1,000 times, but I'm only going to do it 3 times because, to both of our coaches that came on here with such great insights and great stories. And I know that a lot of people that are going to be listening to this are going to take pieces of knowledge from it as they're listening to it, because we went into some really good conversations and you guys gave us a lot of stuff that can inspire a lot of people. So I want to say thank you to both of the coaches.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Like a big part in our stuff today is kind of just like representation matters, right? And seeing women of color who are strong, who are confident, who are all those nice words you want to put in there, like that is the biggest thing that this generation needs. You know, just kind of we saw that with Obama. We kind of see that with Masai Ujiri, with like the whole NBA stuff, and kind of seeing women who are kind of in the pinnacle and kind of doing that kind of stuff is really important. So yeah, so just thank you guys for your time. Definitely appreciate it.
Definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to meet you guys.
And so, on that note, this has been the Chatroom Podcast, your favorite baller's favorite podcast, and we are out.
Out of here.
Peace.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.